Hi, Hannah. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. I'm happy it's Friday.
Me too. Definitely.
So for this tax interview, what we're going to be really doing is we want to have our students learn more about tax. And we're hoping that you could provide students with more of an insight into tax because some students have not majored in accounting or worked in tax before. So we really just want to expand their horizons.
Absolutely. Well, if it helps, I did not also major in accounting or work in tax before this, and now I'm a tax lawyer. So happy to provide any perspective that I can.
My first question is, can you please talk a little bit about why you chose tax law?
Sure. So, like I said, my background is not in accounting. I studied philosophy and art, so I was definitely like, in my liberal arts phase, I guess. And when I went to law school, I did not know what I wanted to do. I was one of those students who took a significant amount of time off, and I knew I didn't want to be a criminal lawyer, but beyond that, I really was pretty open to whatever I found interesting. And during my 1L year, I took contracts, which I surprisingly liked. I didn't expect that. And then during the spring of my 1L year, I was allowed to take an elective. So they offered several different courses, one of them being tax. And my brother, who's also a lawyer, suggested I take tax. I love jigsaw puzzles as a side. And he was like, tax is very like puzzly, you'll enjoy that. And he was right. I took one, I think after 1 or 2 weeks of class, there was something in me that kind of clicked with tax. I felt like maybe just because it had like statutes and rules, but also a lot of the work I do does feel like I'm doing logic puzzles or at least something similar. So it was unexpected for me, but once I started in tax and got into it, I ended up taking tax courses every semester following. I'm kind of hooked on it. So
Did you take contracts before tax law?
yes, we take Temple, we took contracts 1L fall.
Oh, very interesting. We take it 1L spring, so our electives and contracts are together.
Oh, interesting. I don't know that it like was the deciding point for me to get into tax, but it definitely, my background was in social work and like I had worked in the hospital setting. And so I definitely didn't expect to get so into contracts. But yeah, I took that in the fall.
Definitely helps.
Mm-hmm.
And then my next question is, can you please discuss some of the projects that you work on at your current firm, if you're allowed to do so?
Sure, I can speak generally about. So I work for both the tax partner and a couple of our estate partners. So I do, basic wills and drafting of estate planning documents. And then on the tax side, we work, I would say, primarily with LLCs and partnerships. We do have a couple S corporations, a handful of C corporations, and we do tax planning. We do some employee benefits. We work with several nonprofits. And so what I like about it is you never know each day what's going to come on your desk. And so, we work with companies that do real estate, anything from like locally with commercial property. We did something with a slaughterhouse. So like we've been all over the place. But yeah, typically it's, we're doing right now like a reorganization of an entity structure. And so tax planning for that. We did, I don't know how like detailed to go into this. Some of it, I wouldn't say it's boring. I find it interesting, but maybe a little, but we did like a reorganization for a corporation recently. I won't start citing specific code provisions. That's when you've really become a tax nerd. But we get a wide array of tax planning questions. Occasionally we do tax compliance, so appeals with the IRS, whether it be for a business or an individual, but primarily we're on the planning side. So I get a good variety, I'd say, of different entities. Some of it just being basic entity formation, all the way to, like I said, a merger or reorg.
So you said that a lot of your work is primarily on the planning side. Does that mean that it's transactional for the
Yes.
most part?
Yes. So, or it could be formation. So it could be, creating an entity structure for a business where you have subsidiaries or a disregarded entity as part of the, like, for example, in a property ownership transaction where a real estate company is buying a business, you may not want just one entity to be a part of that. So you structure it so that, one entity owns the property, another entity leases the property, just so that you have protection and limited liability throughout. And so we do that, like I said, on the transactional side, and then on the more formation side. But yeah, it's great. I mean, I feel like in tax too, with also doing estates planning, we'll do a will, but also a succession plan for a small business, say. So that piece, you get a corporate tax aspect to it as well, even though we may be engaging a client for estate planning. If they have a family business that they want to leave to their kids, that will involve, tax planning as well. So it's a nice variety, I would say. But yeah, mainly transactional work.
Definitely. And then, so I know that there's an intersection between tax law and corporate law. Mm-hmm. Can you please discuss a little bit about it?
Sure. So anytime, we have a corporate lawyer who's doing a deal, like, for example, we had an asset sale from one LLC to another, the corporate lawyers do the negotiating of the deal terms, but they come to us to figure out, okay, what's the most, because there's so many considerations in finding a favorable deal term, and tax is only one piece of that. So we're not necessarily at the table negotiating, but they'll come to us and ask for an assessment of, okay, how do we do this in the most advantageous way for our client to minimize tax or to get strategic tax advantages. And so that's something that we may be involved in on the front end of it. We may be also drafting documents, but again, we're not sitting at the table part of the negotiation so much as we are on the planning side of things. So, but yeah, we provide support through corporate transactions and work pretty closely with our team, our corporate team.
And then, so for me, for example, I think I'm more interested in corporate law. Would you recommend taking tax courses so to better be able to serve my clients in the future?
I think everybody, regardless of what you do, I think tax is a useful course to take, even just basic income tax, to understand how it works. I mean, there is no big law firm that can function without a tax department, right? So having even a basic understanding of the fundamentals, I think, is beneficial for any lawyer, but especially in corporate, because if you're thinking, okay, I'm coming to the table and I want to be best informed, when you talk to a tax lawyer, having some of the foundational pieces will help you better understand what we're saying, essentially, what we're advising, and then you can convey that to your client, you can convey that to the other side. And yeah, I mean, they're just so interconnected that I would say, a basic understanding of how the system works and just getting that introduction is I would say, very helpful.
And in undergrad, when I thought of accounting, I just thought of numbers, to be honest. So are there a lot of numbers in tax law?
Yes and no. So I think accounting and tax law obviously kind of run parallel to each other. We work very closely with accountants, and we have several accountants that refer clients to us when they need more strategic planning. I think the big difference, I work a lot on spreadsheets, and so that's become, a kind of niche area for me that I'm enjoying. The day-to-day crunching of numbers is not probably as intense as accountants, and also the spreadsheets that I'm making are, driven by legal principles. So they're different than what an accountant is making who's tracking. I mean, I work with some fantastic accountants who have taught me so much already, but that's more of a practical tracking numbers approach, whereas one of the partners I work with builds these really complicated spreadsheets based on, for example, estate planning rules about what I was talking about earlier, business entities, where we will try to project different structures to get the best results. So yes, there's a lot of numbers, but I also joke that some of what we do is like word math. So I feel like you're trying to get the point across. Like numbers are always a great example of what we're trying to explain. So a lot of times, with clients, we will pick the most basic example of the numbers. And I think that's a good way of illustrating what we're explaining in terms of the deal. But I mean, I'm not sitting here crunching numbers every day as much as I am reading memos and trying to, explain concepts. So I would say it's a nice balance. I didn't really think of myself as a numbers person before. I mean, like I said, I was in the liberal arts field, but the math that I'm doing and the spreadsheets I'm making are complicated more so just for how to get the steps. Like using a spreadsheet, it's going to do the math for you is my point. So it's more about understanding the law and understanding how to apply it to the numbers and how to calculate what you're doing. But I wouldn't say it's like, every day I'm working with numbers. And I would say I like it more than I thought I would, the numbers piece.
I actually asked that because I was a math major in undergrad, but I always joke around saying I don't understand math anymore after I took like higher level courses. So now people are like, they make the assumption saying that, oh, you must be good with numbers. And I'm like, I don't think I want to look at a single number anymore after doing a math major.
Well, I'm pretty sure we don't even scratch the surface of, there's no calculus involved in what I'm doing. Like we're talking about statistics more so, and then, basic computations of percentage rates and, interest and all of that. But it's typically, not, I wouldn't think high level math. I have no background in math. So I can see why as a math major, you might be put off by it, but I'm sure you went much deeper than we do.
It's okay. I graduated undergrad in 2020 and I haven't looked at calculus since, and I'm not complaining.
Well, I don't think you would in tax either, but that's good to know.
And then I've seen a lot of discussion related around cannabis law, especially because marijuana has become legalized in many states. Mm-hmm. So can you talk about the intersection between cannabis law and tax law?
Yeah, sure. So we have a cannabis law group here at my firm, and I have been fascinated by the tax piece of this since I learned more about it. I also feel like the world we're moving to is that, eventually it will become federally legal. So right now, my firm is regional. We're in Philly, we're in New Jersey, New York, and Delaware. With New Jersey just recreationalizing marijuana, we have, going back to what I was saying about forming entities and advising businesses, we work with cannabis clients to help them, maintain their business or start their business in accordance with New Jersey law. And one of the interesting pieces for us, well, a lot of it is like state and local tax. So we're talking to businesses about sales tax, about some of the state law considerations for type of entity, like for example, do you want to be an LLC? Do you want to be a corporation, et cetera? But what I think is really exciting and what I think I'll see in hopefully the early parts of my career is if and when cannabis is legalized at a federal level, the IRS has already issued guidance to cannabis businesses, which because right now cannabis is a Schedule I substance, it doesn't, it's illegal. The IRS can't give some of the deductions and some of the business benefits, so to speak, to cannabis businesses. And so they do provide some guidance on how to, maximize tax savings, but there is in the banking world, in the tax world, a lot of out-of-date law that once Congress eventually legalizes cannabis, will open cannabis businesses up to more favorable tax treatment, less stringent banking regulations. And I think that will involve a lot of tax planning for cannabis businesses. And so that's something that I feel really strongly about because, there's a lot of work to be done at the state level to make sure these businesses are in compliance. But once the federal government moves, I'm sure the IRS is already gearing up. I'm sure they already have a plan for when that does happen, but obviously there's no timeline. But when that does happen, a lot of cannabis businesses will suddenly be able to take advantage of tax deductions and other such things that they couldn't before. So, so that's where it kind of ties in. And I think, in Pennsylvania, we have just medical marijuana, but New Jersey has recreationalized. So it's an interesting area, and it's an area of law certainly that's in development. And I think, just even what we've seen with President Biden commuting federal sentences and those kinds of things, I think we're seeing a shift in cannabis. And I'm hopeful that that will happen, in the next 10 years or less, that would be exciting for me in my practice.
Definitely. So you mentioned that PA just has medical marijuana and Jersey has recreational marijuana. Is there a difference in the way that a difference in their tax laws, or do they just follow the same laws under each of the respective states?
Sure. So without getting too granular about that just because it's a state and local tax is not the most exciting topic, but essentially, to simplify it, like in New Jersey, they also have medical marijuana. And so the laws for cannabis businesses differ if you're a recreational dispensary or if you're a recreational grower versus if you're a medical grower. So medical marijuana in New Jersey is not subject to state sales tax in the same way that or rather at all. And recreational marijuana, depending on the type of business you are, you might be subject to a different type of or different rate of sales tax. So yes, they are taxed differently. And I can speak more to like a state that has both rather than differences in Pennsylvania and New Jersey, because I would imagine if and when Pennsylvania recreationalizes marijuana, they may implement something similar to the New Jersey sales tax rules or create its own. But essentially, yeah, the difference being which state and local taxes the businesses are subject to.
We actually at Villanova have a cannabis law class now,
That's
which is very interesting because it shows that like the school is also like focusing on the shifts in society and also the legal world.
Yeah, absolutely. There's one at Temple as well. I actually never took it, but I did a great CLE recently. Well, I guess not recently. It was actually on April 20th, 420, which is like known for being the cannabis holiday or something. But no, I mean, I think it's great. When I started here at my firm, I felt, aside from any moral dilemmas people may have with cannabis, which, that's not my business. I think it's a great area that's developing and a great opportunity to bring in business to a firm. And so I was very grateful that we have that. And actually our group has been around for a little while now and has kind of been on the ground floor of some of these things. So it's very encouraging to me. And I think like any of these newer areas like crypto or something, like that's the future. So we might as well jump in, right?
And then my last question for you is, what advice do you have to students that are interested in tax but did not study accounting in undergrad or did not have an opportunity to take the tax elective 1L year?
So my advice would be, if you're a current law student that's interested in tax, first step is take tax. So if you didn't take it in your 1L year, that's okay. I'm sure it's offered. I mean, it's offered every semester at Temple. So I would imagine it is at Villanova. Definitely take that. And for me, I focused on taking as many tax courses as possible. I mean, I really wanted to get as much of a well-rounded tax education as I could. I mean, I took other classes too, like I took bankruptcy and, secure transactions, corporations, things that would complement tax and things that would, like you were saying with wanting to be in the corporate world, it's important for the tax lawyer to understand what the corporate lawyers are sitting down at the table to talk about, aside from just the tax piece. We have the mindset of like, do it for this reason, do this structure for this reason. But if the reason is solely for tax, that's not going to always, actually the IRS has rules where you can't do certain things if it's just solely for tax. You need a business purpose for them. So the intersection between those is important. And then, I would say for me as a student, excuse me, I was very focused on making sure I did as well as I could in my courses. So taking things that interested me were helpful, seeking out opportunities, talking to tax professionals, not just at firms, but within the IRS, I talked to a lot of accounting firms when I was looking for jobs. They employ lawyers, obviously. So I would say just trying to get as much exposure as you can. I would not let the fact that you studied something in undergrad be a barrier, because, with most things, lawyers are coming to law school with the expectation, or, students are coming to law school with the expectation that they're going to be learning a whole new way of thinking, a whole new way of processing information, and basically a whole new language. So tax, I think, is no different than other areas of the law. And in that you're not going to really, even if you studied math or accounting, you're not going to really understand tax law until you are in law school. So I wouldn't let that be a barrier whatsoever. In fact, one of my favorite professors, we sat down for a meeting once, my 3L year, and we were talking about job options. And I said, oh, well, I was a philosophy major, so I don't know how that'll help me. He's like, so was I. And now I'm the head of the tax program at Temple. So I think, it shouldn't be, don't let that be a barrier at all. And like I said, my work experience, I worked in nonprofits, I worked in healthcare. So it's not even like I was in the corporate world whatsoever before law school. And I turned out just fine. So.
Thank you.